Armor progression in Monster Hunter World isn't black and white. A lot of it depends on what weapon you're using, how willing you are to farm materials, and there is an element of building things that you think look cool. As a general rule of thumb, you shouldn't care too much about the actual defensive stats and elemental resistances on a set. You should be looking at the armor skills. That being said, armor and resistances can save you, and the armor sets are tiered. If you're finding yourself struggling, upgrading your armor with armor spheres or building higher tiered gear will help you survive, even if you have to give up some favorable armor skills. Certain weapons favor certain skills, while others are useful for a vast majority of weapon types, and other skills don't provide an immediate combat advantage and are more for utility. As a rule of thumb, we only care about skills that give us a distinct combat advantage, so things like Honey Hunter, which lets you get more honey from beehives, should be considered largely useless, unless your goal is simply to farm lots of honey instead of hunting giant monsters, which is what the game is about. This guide is laid out to provide a baseline. Depending on your weapon choices and preferences, you may want to explore other equipment options that are not recommended by this guide. Unfortunately, in low rank, the vast majority of skills are only at the first tier, which means you're not going to get much benefit out of anything. There will be pretty easy progression that will apply to every weapon for the first few hunts, and a few weapon-specific upgrades along the way. Right out the gate, gather from bone piles to get Ancient Bones and Monster Bone S. You'll want to build the Bone Helmet and Bone Chest, and possibly the gloves. The Bone Helmet gives you health boost, which will give you more maximum HP on hunts. Health boost will be useful early on, but as your canteen gets upgraded with better ingredients and you start stockpiling crafting materials to make nutrients and mega nutrients, it becomes useless. It's a great starter skill though, and it will be beneficial to make one here. The Bone Chest, which provides attack 1, will be useful for every single weapon type. Unfortunately, the damage bonus is fairly minimal, but it's better than the nothing that you start with. Make these two pieces as soon as possible. If you're using a hammer or hunting horn, you can pick up the bone vambraces for Slugger. This will give you more knockout power against monsters. The hunting horn will also benefit from the bone waste with Horn Maestro. The Kestodon gloves are actually decent if you can consistently slide, which is surprisingly frequent in a lot of areas. You do need to slide for an extended period of time for the bonus to affinity, which is your critical hit rate, to actually kick in, and it wears off quickly. So it's not a great skill. You'll have to kill Kestodons as part of standard progression, and considering there isn't much else this early, you may as well pick these up, even if you never get to use the ability. Don't bother with them if you don't have enough materials at the end of that hunt. Continue progressing and take out the Great Jaggeress. The Jagger's coil provides Fortify. This will be a useful skill if you find yourself carting a lot. You'll get a 10% attack bonus and 15% defense bonus with each cart. You can stack this twice to get 20% attack and 30% defense for your third and final attempt at that monster. There's not a lot else at this point, and most of the Great Jagger's weapons aren't good, so you can safely use your materials to make this waste armor. Even if you don't end up carting and actually using Fortify that often, it's still a decent skill to have for when it does happen. Even the best of us will have an off hunt and cart once or twice. You can also do some next level strategies like double carting at the start of a hunt for that 20% increased attack bonus. After hunting Kulu Yaku, build the Kulu Greaves. These provide critical eye, which will be a 3% affinity bonus. Affinity is basically your critical hit rate. Going from 0 to 3% will allow you to actually perform critical hits, which will be a net damage gain. It's not a huge amount, but will provide a damage boost, and obviously it's better than nothing. You can also build the Kulu Chest for Stamina Surge. Stamina Surge overall will be better than +3 attack from the Bone Chest, especially if you use a weapon type that consistently drains your stamina like bow, switch axe, or dual blades. You should probably pick this up over the Bone Chest for most weapon types, as you'll be sprinting and dodging a lot during hunts, but the Bone Chest will be fine otherwise. So your armor after beating Kulu Yaku should look something like this. Bone Head, Kulu Chest, Kestodon Gloves, Great Jagger's Waist, and Kulu Boots. After Baroth, you'll have some options, but it's largely dependent on what weapon type you're using. The Baroth Head grants Guard. This will be useful for any type of weapon capable of guarding, Lance and Gun Lance especially. The bonus is fairly minor until you're at guard level 2, but it's available now, so you may as well take it. If you're not using a weapon that can guard, obviously skip it as it's no use to you. The Baroth Gloves grant Marathon Runner. Marathon Runner reduces your stamina usage from constant stamina drain. There are two types of stamina drain in Monster Hunter: continuous and fixed stamina drain. Continuous drain is for things like sprinting, charging your hammer, or using demon eyes on dual swords. Fixed drain is from things like dodging attacks and uncharged bow shots. Fixed drain benefits from Constitution rather than Marathon Runner. Marathon Runner is overall better than Affinity Sliding since you'll be sprinting a ton against most monsters, so you should pick these up regardless of your weapon type, but certain weapons will benefit much more from the upgrade, mostly hammers and dual swords. For impact weapons like hunting horn and hammer, Baroth chest can be a good upgrade for stamina thief. It will make it easier to exhaust monsters, which makes them spend more time just standing around winded, but it also helps prevent them from going into rage mode. It's arguable if it's worth it versus stamina surge from the kulu chest. Basically, build it if you think it looks cool, and you're using a hammer or hunting horn, and you didn't upgrade to the kulu chest at the beginning of the game. Now go beat up Juratotus as part of standard progression. Juratotus' greaves grant focus. Focus at level 1 is a 5% decrease to charge time. For most weapons that benefit from focus, like hammer, greatsword, dual blades, longsword, etc., you should pick these up. Stick with the kulu greaves otherwise. Now go kill Toby Kadachi as part of standard progression. The Kadachi head has Constitution. Pick this up if you're using a bow specifically. The Kadachi gloves give evade extender. This increases the distance you travel when you dodge. It's difficult to quantify, but it can be useful for a general upgrade from Baroth gloves as not every weapon benefits from Marathon Runner. Lance and Switch Axe will want evade extender for back and side hops. Now go murder an Jeanette as part of standard progression. Jeanette stuff will be a big upgrade for a few weapon types, but will likely require farming. The chest requires a plate, but also provides Marathon Runner and good defenses. If you're using the Baroth gloves too, pick this up if you got a plate, but I wouldn't waste your time attempting to farm Jeanette more than a few times. Marathon Runner at level 2 will severely reduce your stamina usage and will be excellent for hammer and dual swords. If you're using a bow or bowgun, absolutely pick up the Ange Vambraces. This boosts bowgun special ammo by 10% and the power of the bow's Dragon Piercer by 10%. You will be sticking with these for all of low rank, so make sure that you get them here. The final piece of Anjanath gear is for Gunlance and Charge Blade. Every other weapon should ignore it. Pick up the Anjanath boots for artillery. This boosts the power of all your shells and Wyvern Fire and the file attacks for Charge Blade. It's bread and butter stuff for those weapons. Then take on Zora Magdaros and push forward into the Coral Highlands. Again, if you're using a Gunlance or Charge Blade, you can also pick up a high metal coil for capacity boost. It's more consistent than Fortify from the Jagger's coil, as well as having higher base armor. You'll need Dragonite ore, and you can mine it from Zora Magdaros' back or once you reach the Coral Highlands. Once you're in the Coral Highlands, you can also optionally hunt Zetsuyaku. The Zetsuyaku chest grants Constitution. Stack it with the Kadachi head for any weapon that wants Constitution, like bow, for an additional bonus. Probably upgrade regardless if you didn't build the Anjanath chest, since Bone and Kulu will be starting to feel pretty weak defensively at this point, and Constitution and Stamina Surge are pretty similar. Pick up the Paolumu gloves if you're using a Gunlance or Charge Blade. It will give you a second boost to artillery. That's a good thing. The Paolumu chest can be good, especially if you're using an insect glaive and can consistently mount monsters. Otherwise, it's something you can skip since the bonuses from Marathon Runner, Constitution, or Stamina Surge will be more consistent. Now get down into the Rotten Vale and take out Radaban. Radaban Coil will be a great pickup for lance users and other guarding weapons. Gunlance will be arguable, as you're giving up the high metal coil's capacity up for guard. That's your choice. Capacity is probably better overall. Radaban headpiece can be good for hammers and hunting horn users, but you'll likely only be able to pull off 1 or 2 knockouts per hunt regardless of the increased power. Constitution from the Kadachi head is probably just better overall for dodging. Once you unlock the Tail Rider Safari, you have a chance of being able to find Sinister Cloth. It's fairly rare, and definitely not consistent. If you do get 1 or 2, look at building the Death Stench gloves for focus if you're using a weapon that benefits from it, and the boots for handicraft. Handicraft increases your weapon's sharpness. It's a great skill, but needs a few points to really excel. 1 point isn't that noticeable, and it's hard to get more in low rank on anything but boots. Keep progressing until you have to fight Odogaron in the Rotten Vale. Odogaron's set will be useful for some skills like speed sharpening, constitution, and critical eye. It's also the first set with a decent set bonus. Punishing Draw's mileage will vary depending on your weapon type, but overall it's a reasonable set. Since you've been kind of looking like a dork at this point, a lot of you probably want to build it since it looks cool, and you know what? More power to you. It does require a plate for the coil. I would recommend upgrading your Jagger's coil if you're still using it to the Odogaron coil 100% of the time, but with the plate, it's a hard sell. If you get a plate, consider it, otherwise just move on. You'll be able to use the plate again in high rank. Your next hunts are Rathalos and Diablos, which again have some reasonable skills and set bonuses. At this point, we're so close to high rank that it may be better to skip these upgrades and just move on, but it is your decision. Rathalos' helm has attack up, but the big boy is the chest, which gives weakness exploit. Weakness exploit is one of the best skills in the game, and this is your first opportunity to get it. It gives a huge affinity bonus while you hit monsters' weak points, which honestly, you should be doing regardless, so it's just a huge net damage increase. Unfortunately, it requires a plate, which won't be an easy feat to get. If you get it from your mandatory story hunt, build this and don't think twice about it. If you manage to get the Rathalos chest, consider going for the 3-piece Rathalos set. It provides critical element, which ups the elemental damage from critical hits. Obviously, if you're using a raw-based weapon and don't have any elemental damage, skip the bonus and just take the chest. The Diablo's helm provides critical draw, which is really good for greatsword. It adds 30% affinity to draw attacks. This is great if you're not adept at chaining charge attacks together and instead are relying more on hit and run tactics with draw attacks. The Diablo's waist provides marathon runner, and you should pick it up if you're using an armor set that benefits or are still using the jagger's coil. Diablo's 3-piece set is actually pretty reasonable, as it ups your attack power as your weapon's sharpness degrades. It might be a good pickup if you're using a weapon that benefits from at least 3 pieces of its armor set. Now finish off Zora Magdaros for real, hunt a deceptively strong Pookie Pookie, and enter high rank. Once you hit high rank, you'll be wanting to build high rank sets as they provide more powerful armor skills, have more defense, and are just genuinely better than the low rank sets. There's also a new stipulation of alpha and beta armor. Beta has less skills, but comes with decoration slots. For the purposes of this guide, I'll assume that you have no useful decorations, which means that the alpha sets are what you should take. You'll have to make some assertions on if it's worthwhile for you to go for an alpha or beta piece based on your decorations. Some of the gear, it's better to take a slot, even if you don't have a great decoration to put in it yet, since the secondary skill is something you won't benefit much from anyways. This mostly applies to the very end game gear. You should probably take the slots. If you're using high tier, low rank sets like Odogaron, Rathalos, and Diablos, you'll be able to hang on to them for a while. If you're still using equipment from easy monsters like Juratotis or Broth, you should upgrade them immediately. I went through the entirety of high rank using low rank Diablos and Odogaron armor the first time through, but I wouldn't recommend it. The easy answer here is the same stuff that you made in low rank will work in high rank. Right out the gate of high rank, you have a lot of upgrade options. You're not gated from monsters nearly as much as you were in low rank. There is one standout piece of gear that you should go for immediately. Kulu Headpiece Alpha grants Weakness Exploit. It's awesome. It should be your first priority. This will be your first access to Weakness Exploit if you didn't farm a Rathalos plate. You'll also get Fire Resistance as a bonus, which should help against Jeanette, Rathalos, and maybe even Teostra down the line. Kulu Male Alpha is also a nice pickup with Critical Eye and Stamina Surge. 2 great skills for general purpose hunting. You can also pick up the Kulu Greaves Alpha. This will give you Critical Eye and Item Prolonger as a nice little bonus. At the start of this guide, I said you want strictly combat upgrades, but high rank has multiple points where you have to gather a huge amount of monster tracks, and building the Hunter's Headpiece Alpha will give you a skill called Scholar. This will speed up the process of finding the Pinkarathian tracks and later the Nergigante, Teostra, Kushala Deora, and Val Hazak tracks. It may very well be worth it to wear this while farming the resource points to progress in high rank, even though you lose Weakness Exploit from the Kulu Headpiece in your hunts. Obviously, once you're done with your research, put the Kulu Headpiece back on. It's too good not to use. From here, hunt Great Jaggers if you're still using the coil and didn't grab the Diablos upgrade. You'll maintain Fortify, but also gain Speed Eating as a nice little bonus on top of the high rank defenses. You can also pick up a Leather Belt Alpha for Stamina Surge or a Chainmail Belt Alpha for Quick Sheath as alternatives. If you're using a Lance, picking up the Baroth Head Alpha and the Waist Alpha will be great for extra guard. The Baroth Greaves and Baroth Arms are also nice pickups. They provide Marathon Runner, Stun Resistance, and Stamina Thief. Baroth Arms require a gem, so it may be a while before you can get a hold of them. Anything that benefits from Focus should get the Juratotis Boots Alpha as soon as possible for Focus 2. Unfortunately, these also require a gem, but you can get them reliably from Baroth, Juratotis, and Radaban. If you're gun lancing, take out Anjanath for the Boots Alpha for Artillery 2. There will be a lot of artillery gear coming up, and it maxes out at level 3. You're going to want to assert what skills are more useful on armor parts and go from there. If you're using a bow or bow gun, you finally have a chance to upgrade your gloves. Build the Anja Gloves Beta for special ammo up and a slot. The Anja Male will also be a nice upgrade here, but it requires an Anjanath gem. Anja Male Alpha and Anja Gloves Beta will max out special ammo up, and you'll be able to do much more damage with your bow guns and Dragon Piercer on your bow. Build your choices and you should have a set that's capable of getting you through the rest of high rank. Once you finish the research points, you can fight Pinkarathian. Then you'll have to do more researching. Hooray. Once you unlock the Elder's Recess, you have a new set of monsters available to you. Dodogama, Urigan, and Laviasoth. If you're gunning or bow gunning, prioritize getting the Laviasoth Boots Beta. This will give you spread/power shot. This upgrades the damage on your power coatings on bows and will be extremely good when tied with the Anjanath gear for upgraded Dragon Piercer. Urigan has a good set if you're using a Lance or Gun Lance with a nice 3-piece bonus. You'll be able to get Guard Up, which lets you block previously unblockable attacks. You'll want the Vambraces Beta and Greaves Alpha for Guard. If you're going for this, you'll need to sub in a 3rd piece and the skills available aren't great, but Guard Up should make it worthwhile overall. Now for targets to get you situated for endgame. You will have Rathalos and Diablos available to you from the start of high rank, but it's advisable to get some armor upgrades first, because they're pretty deadly. Diablos still has skills like Critical Draw, but the set requires Majestic Horns. Those are usually better spent on weapon upgrades at this point. However, you can get the extremely valuable non-elemental damage up from the 4-piece set bonus. This will mostly be useful for Greatsword, but building the Diablos Helm Beta for Critical Draw the Coil Alpha for Marathon Runner and Critical Draw, the Diablos Nero Braces Alpha, and then either the Diablos Nero Chest or Diablos Greaves will give you the 4-piece bonus. This will make certain weapons extremely powerful, but if you have any status or element on your weapon, you won't get the bonus, so it's not worth using. For other weapons, the Diablos 2-piece set is easy to make, and a lot of weapons are favorable to Focus and Marathon Runner. Building the Diablos Nero Bracers Alpha and Diablos Coil Beta for Marathon Runner 2 and a slot or Alpha if you want some critical draw will be a good starting point to pick up Bludgeoner with minimal investment. Just like in low rank, the Rathalos Mail is extremely good, but it requires a ruby. You'll be able to get Weakness Exploit 2 with it, but you'll need to hunt Rathalos a huge amount of times to get that ruby. It also has a really good 2 and 4-piece set bonus, but the rest of the Rathalos set isn't great. Depending on your preferences, it's fine to skip this since there are much easier ways to get Weakness Exploit 2, it just comes significantly later. While the rest of the Rathalos armor isn't great, the set bonus is actually shared with Azure Rathalos' armor set, which has some great skills. You can build the Wrath Soul Helm Beta for critical boost, then the Wrath Soul Beta boots and gloves for focus and decoration slots. This will be a really good target set pre-Elder Dragons, but you'll need 2 rubies to take advantage of it. You'll need to farm a lot of Rathalos and Azure Rathalos for this, but will be excellent gear for taking out the remaining monsters in the game if you're struggling. Basil Juice Gloves Beta will give you 2 critical draw. If you're using a greatsword and skip the Diablos gear, it's definitely worth picking up. The rest of the Basil Juice set has earplugs and spades, so if you're really sick of getting stunned from monster roars, you can look into it. 3-piece Basil Juice set will also give you Guts. It's a pretty good skill, but don't rely on it. Now everything after this point is either the Elder Dragon sets or requires Elder Dragon materials like Elder Dragon Blood or Elder Dragon Bones, which means you have to defeat at least Nergigante to get this stuff. Once you've cleared him, you can focus on building his full set. It's an excellent baseline armor. Full Nergigante set will give you Agitator, a huge attack bonus, and tons of stamina surge. It's a great general purpose set for most weapons. The helmet does require a Nergigante gem, so it's a low priority. If you do get a Nergigante gem, it's almost always better to save it for the weapon's second upgrade tier. The 3-piece set bonus is not the best, but the skills and defenses on the set are overall really good. Since the helmet requires a gem, you'll probably want to instead build the Dragon King eye patch. This gives Weakness Exploit at level 2 and a slot for a decoration. It's easily one of the best headgears in the game, and it's really easy to build. Going 3 or 4-piece Nergigante with Dragon King eye patch will be an extremely good starting setup for endgame gear. This is before you start getting into really specific armor and decoration setups for endgame, which will require farming a lot of rare parts and decorations. After you've beaten and farmed Nergigante, you're going to want to experiment and figure out what skills you like on your desired weapon types and progress from there. Thanks for watching. If you thought this video was helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel. Guides for the rest of the weapons are on the way.